And technically, you're better off making 55 grand a year as a household of four and living off government benefits like the SNAP and all that other kind of crap. You got a better take-home scenario. And you're probably in a scenario where if you do that, one parent can stay home with the kids.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. It is only intended to provide education about the financial industry. To determine which investments may be appropriate for you, consult your financial advisor prior to investing. Any past performance discussed during this program is no guarantee of future results. Any indices referenced for comparison are unmanaged and cannot be invested into directly. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate and actual performance may differ. As always, please remember investing involves risk and possible loss of principal capital. Please seek advice from a licensed professional.
And we are back. Welcome to another edition of the Daily Dot. You just caught me making sure our board was correct. And I am joined, as always, by the brain trust himself, Mr. Chase Taylor. Several things to discuss today, but one of the ones we want to jump into is the article by Mike Green, who we've had on the show before. It's made a lot of waves. But before we do that, let's get a rundown of the old markets. Chase, how'd we fare today?
Yeah, a fairly boring day as far as indexes go, at least, which is nice to have for once now that we're in positive gamma. But S&Ps were down about 0.5%, Qs down about a third. Small caps got spanked, though, down 1.26. Equal weight was down 0.7. Mag 7 was a little less than flat. Overseas was down 0.4, though EEM was almost perfectly flat. Dollar pretty flat, although at one point during the day we went down and tested the 50-day. So it was down like 0.3-ish and kind of bounced off the 50-day. But all of a sudden, the dollar, to me at least, looks sort of a little weak, like it might want to break down. Speaking of breaking down, Bitcoin down 4.5. That was more like 5.5, 6 at one point. Oil up 1.5, gas up 1.5. Gold up 0.4, silver up another 2 and change. Platinum, palladium went from up a ton to down. Copper flat. I think most notable for me today, 10-year and 30-year bonds were up 8 basis points, and you're up 4 on the front end. So that was a little bit notable, and flat on vol.
Yeah. Hey, it's what makes a market. You and I have differing view. Well, I wouldn't, not differing views. I think we're on either side of it as far as the way we think the year is going to be resolved. Problem is I was hoping that you had different reasons for why I thought this, and it's kind of like just pick a side. I have a hard time arguing with your point of view that you just think we're going to levitate into year end.
Yeah. I
think if somebody put a gun to my head, even though it's not as intellectually satisfying, it's a nice way to end a good year.
Right.
You know, hey, you want to make this as hard as possible, or you just want to pick up a good 8 to 10 going to the end of the year? I'll take the 8 to 10. Right. So it's good either way. I see where we're at on the 50 days. I'm just still really nervous. I don't like what I'm seeing out of crypto. I don't like the stocks that are rallying. But we'll see. I guess we'll get some resolution in the next 3 or 4 weeks, one way or the other.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
We'll know a month from now how the year ended.
Yeah, but
to get Yogi Bear on this.
yeah. Yes, it's a tough thing about predictions. But moving to what I think is a more important topic, and I'm assuming a lot of people that are listening to this have probably read about it, if not read the piece. But I don't want to call him a friend of the show. I don't know Mike personally. I've hung out with him once personally, and I've had him on the show once. Good guy. I think he's an honest actor. I think he believes what he says. I feel highly confident of that. I don't know Mike well enough to say that. I've just never seen any evidence that points to the opposite. And I think he put out a really interesting piece where the official poverty line is still at what, 62,000? Is that where they got it?
About 60.
Okay. And his argument was that he thinks the poverty line's more close to 140,000.
Right.
And the basic argument that it is drawn, or that article to me has drawn a shocking amount of criticism and angst.
Big time.
And let me explain really quick why.
From every corner too.
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone doesn't like it, basically.
Mm-hmm. And the old formula used for the poverty line. This was another thing that frustrating me about the criticism that he got, where I was like, okay, guys, like he's using that as a comparison to where you were, right? But think about how the relationships between what it costs you to live have changed since they made that part. Meaning there are so many additional expenses you have today that you didn't have back then.
Right.
Right. Like your phone cost you $6 a month back then. Right. Now, on an inflation adjusted basis, you could say, oh, it's worth 80. It's not worth the 400 most people are paying for their phone bills now. Right. And there's so many little things like that. So basically, people were saying that, oh, the poverty line's at 61,000 because we're going to use the old formulation of looking what average food costs would be for a family of four at that price. And then you triple food costs, and then there's your poverty line, right? But like I said, there's so many different expenses.
And the funny thing about that is that food's like the one thing that didn't go crazy. So judging on food alone, it looks a lot better than it is. The problem, of course, is the things that went up so much in value are services and things like insurance. Like health insurance is the thing you really need. Car insurance, home insurance, renter's insurance. You need all these things. They went up a bunch. The cost of education has gone up immensely. The cost of childcare has gone up immensely. And the availability of childcare, as he points out, like back in the day, less women were working. They tended to watch each other's kids and stuff. So your cost for childcare was going to be relatively low as a percentage of your income. And now it's significant as a percentage of your income. And I'm sure like all working people out there know someone who one of the spouses went back to work to make 60 and then they paid 30 to 40 for childcare. And it's like, man, you got a full-time job to clear 10, 20, 30 grand, because the childcare just rips out such a big piece of it. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's a perfect explanation. But it was funny because you and I had conversations about this exact same topic months ago. And it was way more off cuff. There was no research behind it, but it was just kind of quick back of the envelope math. You're sitting there going, and we didn't say poverty line, but I remember the discussion that we had. And I said to you, how can you even raise a family of four on 140 grand a year? Right? Now, look, I know people can do it, but I'm talking about if you had to buy a home at some point in the last 2 or 3 years, right? If you had to, if this is another place things get really confusing. 140K to the 35-year-old family with 2 kids is a lot different than 140K to the 65-year-olds who have a paid off house.
Yeah.
Massive difference.
And already won the asset game.
Yeah, right. And they're already sitting on a paid for $1.1 million asset, right? That they can get reverse mortgages on, that have no tax supply. There's so many different things.
And I think that's the point of this is this people always want to look at the aggregates and to look at these things. But what to me, like Mike's really talking about, it's working class people and middle class people that are younger and don't have, haven't tapped into the asset wealth, the asset boom that we've had for the last 25 years or whatever. Like this is a very different game for those people. Like, and one of the points he made that I really, really appreciated and that was helpful to me was, if you think about COVID during the pandemic, whatever that 2 years ish was, where not everyone was going to work and everything, like these people all got a break from the childcare costs, from the transportation costs. And I mean, the average car is 50 G's now, right? Like I remember my first car, $2,500. So now I'm 42, I'm not 82. So like cars are a lot more expensive now. It was a piece of junk that I bought at an auction, but whatever. So like you got to basically hit pause on all these big expenses like that. And you actually were probably getting not necessarily a raise, but you got money from the government straight up. So you got this like a giant chunk of the population and the working class, middle class got to essentially live the American dream, feel that for like 2 years. And then it was like, all right, well, that's over. You don't get these stimmies anymore and all the freebies. Also, everything just got 40% more expensive, basically. Like, have fun. And then you see this in all these surveys, like, hey, the stock market's at an all-time high and unemployment's 4.5%. And then you see all these consumer confidence surveys and they're abysmal. And I feel like the right thing to do in that environment is to be very curious about why that's the case and try to figure it out. And to me, Mike made a massive contribution to exactly that. And to your point, instead of good faith discussion about it and thinking deeply about what he's saying, not all the technical nonsense, but like the broad strokes of like, hey, maybe this is on something. It's not really what he's seen so far.
Well, so just to give people an indicator of where we're at here, and I'm using that 140 number. I don't know that that's a number. My suspicion is that number is probably better around 100, 110. Okay, but let's just use 140 number. Walk through it. Okay, so 140 less income taxes, benefits pulled out of your check. Walk with 105 take home. Okay. So of that 105 take home, you're looking, let's call that 8,300 a month after taxes, right around there, 8,500. Okay. So house, okay, assuming that you bought that house at some point in the last 3 or 4 years, or if you're looking at buying it today, I think that's probably a better metric of what would it cost you to own that house today. So I'm putting down $3,000. I think that's a pretty modest number. Right?
Obviously incredibly regional dependent and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. But, you know, all thrown out here. I remember, what was that? 2003, 2004. Remember a cousin of mine bought a house and he had like a $3,300 mortgage on it. And I remember thinking that was just obscene, right? Just obscene. But you think about it today, right? You're looking at about 70, I think at current rates right now, you're looking at about $7,200 per $1 million financed.
So median is low to mid 2000s apparently right now.
Okay. Low to mid 2000s. Okay. So low to mid 2000s, you put it at $3,000, whatever. Okay. I'm going to throw in there for cars, and we're talking monthly expenses here, $1,000. Okay.
That is probably on the low end.
Well, yeah, because the average,
you need two.
The average car payment's $500.
Yeah.
Right. So let's call that 1,500. Okay. And I think you're still going to have maintenance. You're still going to have oil changes and stuff like that, but we'll do it a solid, right? We'll just call it 1,500. Okay. Food, $1,000 a month. I don't know if my suspicion is you could feed a family of $400,000 a month.
That wouldn't be easy, I don't think anymore, but
No
yes,
kidding.
you can.
You can tell I haven't done much grocery shopping. And the only thing I ever go pick up is like, you know, hors d'oeuvres type stuff, wine, you know, so I'm always buying the luxury
Just getting
stuff.
the cheese and the wine. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'd have to consult the boss to really figure out what that stuff costs. But food, we'll call it $1,000. And then I think I'm being extremely generous here. Utilities, clothing, internet, phones, gas, just a couple off front, $2,000 for all that. Seems reasonable.
Sure.
I mean, it seems cheap.
I think that's call it good.
Ballpark. Okay. So right there, we're at 4,500, 5,500, 7,500. We haven't put any money aside for college. We haven't paid for any sport activities whatsoever, right? We haven't put any money into retirement.
Childcare is nothing.
We haven't talked about childcare, which if you're both working, making that kind of money, right? You got to have, somebody's got to be watching the kids. But just going through that, which is, we're nowhere close, right? No savings, no nothing. That's $140,000 right there.
Yep. So if you want to make it, you better be on that kind of income. You better be renting an apartment that's small. You better be driving a hoopty. You know what I mean? Like you better not buy any organic groceries or anything that's healthy.
Well, and I put out a tweet about this the other night where I just said, look, whether that number is 140 or whether that number is 100, the point is the official number we're using is nonsense. It's nonsense. And technically, you're better off making $55,000 a year as a household of 4 and living off government benefits like the SNAP and all that other kind of crap. You got a better take-home scenario. And you're probably in a scenario where if you do that, one parent can stay home with the kids.
Yep.
So I look at it and I go, if you have a system where I can live a higher standard of living, making $50,000 a year less, that is a problem.
Yep.
Right? Like
that was one of the main points he was making that a lot of people didn't grab onto. Is like that there's not like a to me, like obviously policies should build a meaningful bridge out of low income and stress out of that and on and up. Another thing another point Mike's made that this article was less about is like mobility has actually really been pinched. Back in the day, people would move for opportunity a lot, and that made the economy more dynamic. It made opportunities obviously better for individuals. Like that is harder now than it used to be, and it happens a lot less than it used to. And I think some of this we're talking about is kind of part of that, you know?
Well, and the other thing too, I was thinking about this over the weekend, and I'd have to go back through. I didn't go back through the data and really look at it, but I was sitting there going, when you look at this economy, especially if you talk to people that are trying to afford it, right? That are trying to fight their way through it. And then you look at the CPI numbers, it just doesn't compute. But you know what starts computing is if you just start inserting the annual increase in retail sales. Like you start looking at those numbers in relation to the economy and you're like, that would make more sense if that was the CPI number, right? Like if you're putting me in an economy right now, you're telling me right now the CPI is at 3. Consumer sales, I think over the weekend, Black Monday, I think they were, or Black Friday, I think they were estimated to be up like 7% year over year.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is, and this is a great illustration, Black Friday sales were up 7% year over year. Volumes down 1%.
There you go.
So it tells you people are struggling and buying less. But hey, I mean, tariffs made goods prices a lot more expensive and inflation just in general. So the sales number looks nice at 7 until you realize
it looks like inflation.
It's all price, right?
It's inflation,
right?
And so that's why this CPI number is nonsense. That CPI number, if that CPI number is more accurate for guys like you and I than it is for a new family, right? Just meaning if I own my home and I've got all of these things, right? If you know, I don't have to finance car, right? You could sit there and look at my life and it might be tracking closer to that 3 to 4 number, but there's so many of those things I'm not having to pay for.
Right. You know what I mean? And the asset side of your balance sheet is like a shield that really helps, you know, defend you from the inflation side where, you know, somebody that a couple with 2 kids that's, you know, making 75, 85 and struggling, like they don't have some big 401k or, you know, big brokerage account sitting there shielding them, which is why a lot of people are, you know, just hitting the crypto slot machine and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. And it is something that, I think one of the worst things that you can possibly do for the American dream, for our culture, all that, you know, the idea and dream that was America. I think one of the quickest ways to destroy that is to impede upward economic mobility and to remove the hope from the deal.
Yeah.
I sat there and listened to a guy on Twitter make this argument that kids are great off these years. Look, it's so much better. Things are so much better. And we've so much better than they used to be. And there's several examples of previous generations that had it way harder. Now, in terms of wars and functions that they had to fight, okay, that's fine. But if you're talking about economically, you're illiterate. That's insanity, right? Like, meaning you can just play the percentage games. They could go buy a car, you know, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, they go buy a car for 1/15 of the median income, right? Nowadays, average car price is the median income or close to it, right? It's in that same ballpark. And you just start doing the comps. So this is ridiculous. This isn't feasible. And, you know, I'm old enough to remember when $100,000 a year was a milestone. You pass over that, you're in tall cotton.
Oh, I mean, I still vividly remember that being like the goal. You know?
Yeah. 6 figures, baby.
I remember when I crossed it in the Air Force and just thinking like, this isn't what I thought it would feel like, you know, like looking around, like don't feel super rich.
No, not at all. And that was, I mean, and think about how much more disposable income you had of that than somebody does today.
Right.
You know, so all the point being, we've got some serious structural issues here and we've got some big cultural issues. Problem is they're feeding on each other.
And I mean, it's so obvious when you look at the political backdrop, you know, like a lot of the elections we see as we get more populist outcomes, like it's people reaching for help with this. Like, you know, Mamdani didn't win because a bunch of people in New York are communists. He won because he promised to fix this kind of stuff. Now, obviously, you can look at his methods and disagree with them. You can look at Trump's methods and disagree with them, but same thing. He's elected because everyone that's not poor or rich, which is most people in between, they aren't doing great. It's hard. And they're looking for someone that A, seems like they have recognized this fact, and B, has any idea on how to maybe go about making it better, you know?
And this is how bad things happen, right? Like, and I am not at all saying that I think we've done this. I don't think we have yet, but you can see it tracking there. And we have to some degree. Like if you look, you bring up Mamdani. I know some people would assert Donald Trump is similar. I see it as different, but
they're both populist.
Yeah, yes, certainly attacking things from a populist angle, right? My whole point is saying this is how really bad things happen, because the worse it gets and the longer you go without addressing these problems,
right,
the crazier and crazier election outcomes start happening.
Right, exactly.
Right. And that to me is the scary part of it. The other scary part of it too is there's always been sort of at least from my perspective, kind of an arrogance when we look back at the American Revolution via like the French Revolution, right? Like we kept it on the rails. We came, the Constitution, we did it right. French took that idea and just went off the rails with it, right? Yeah. If you look culturally today, we're so much more like the French than we are the Americans back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
The temperature on things like social media, it has way more French vibes than it does founding father vibes. That's for sure.
It has way more take them out in the city hall and decapitate, or take them out in the city square and decapitate them vibes than it did. And then the underlying part of it, and this is the reality, and it's so difficult to have this conversation because nobody wants to hear it. A big part of this, the majority of it, at least in my opinion, is government profligacy and deciding at some point in the last 20 to 25 years that recessions were no longer palatable and we like number go up, right? And like everything in life, there are plus sides to that. There are benefits. We've seen some of them. There's also costs. And, we've talked about that a lot before. I think one of the biggest things plaguing us culturally is the lack of recognition of that dynamic, that you increasingly hear people speaking as if whether the prescription that they're prescribing would be considered leftist or whether it be considered rightist, all of them promote it as if it's a panacea, right? Like just everybody just needs to get this. It's completely fixable and we'll do it this way. And that doesn't exist. There is no costless fix to any of this stuff.
Right. And there's no quick fix. There's no easy button. Like everything that's typically put forward is going to be an easy button, a quick fix. Like, don't worry about it. It's not it won't hurt you at all, and B, it will be fixed instantly.
Yeah. Well, I listened to
shortcuts. Everything's a shortcut.
Yeah. I was listening to somebody on a podcast, a housing analyst, and a legit housing analyst. I can't remember where they work, but documented, accomplished housing analyst, talking about how she believed we were looking at a potentially 50% drop in real estate prices. And the whole podcast was as if this was the pending doom and all that kind of stuff. And you're like, hey guys, that's not going to be fun. Okay. But on balance, that would fix some things. It's not going to be fun, but it would fix some things. And I was just sitting there going, here's the problem. We're in the middle of this inflationary issue that is literally pricing, especially young people. It is stunting household formation. It's killing the birthing rate. And the horrific outcome that we're focused on is asset prices going down. And I was just sitting there going, isn't this ironic right now?
Yeah.
In the middle of this, where we are literally pricing families out of the ability to compete and participate in this economy, that we're worried about asset prices. And I went, That's how we got here, right? That's how we got here. If number go up is all you care about, then, it's like we're sitting there. Everybody's got a reason why, housing shortfalls, we just need to do this. Nobody really talks about how we got here, right? When a cap rate on a rental property, right, is 6.5%, 7%, and a 30-year U.S. government bond's paying 1.8, where do you think the money's going to go? Where do you think this money is going to go? And if you're in a right location, you've done your homework on the house, I think that there's probably a lot more risk. All things being on balance, the same way you did your homework, I'd much rather own a rental home at 6.5% cap rate than a 30-year U.S. Treasury paying 1.8.
Oh yeah. Other than a bit of a headache, yes. I mean,
I'm getting triple the yield,
right?
And I'm getting the appreciation on the back end. And then here's the other.
And it's a real asset.
Yeah,
like, it's a real thing.
Yeah, and they're wondering the housing crisis, and I'm like, you guys just created an environment where you effectively had a 6.5% yielding tip, and you're wondering why housing prices went up so much, right? Because all the people that would have been invested in that 30-year Treasury paying 1.8%, these are wealthy people that are more financially sophisticated. And if they see an opportunity to go in there and buy what is effectively a 6.5% yielding tip versus a 1.8% yielding 30-year Treasury, what are they going to do? They're going to buy up city blocks. And that's what they did.
Yep.
And so now you separated housing price. Everybody goes, well, housing prices track median incomes. Before you did that, they did, right? Because now you've put it and you've financialized it like everything else. And now it's going to reflect money supply, right? So every time you want to boost liquidity and do that, what are you doing? You're pushing up price of housing. And the killer about doing that is you don't have to own IBM to raise a family. You got to own a home.
Right.
And this goes back to my old arguments about saying, I don't have the answers. I'm not saying I do, but there need to be regulations and laws passed to keep this from happening to residential real estate.
Right. Exactly. It shouldn't be over financialized.
No.
Maybe if you want to financialize apartments or whatever, but like single family homes, like maybe some guardrails.
Yeah.
I mean, I hate to say it, but Xi Jinping probably had this right. Said homes were for a living, not speculating. Like
it's hard to argue, and you make a really good point. Well, why is it okay to do with apartment buildings? Because you're not walking away from half your net worth and equity when an apartment goes. You right? There's so much more competition. If this guy gets I can move 15 minutes on the other side of town, go find, right? Competition can more quickly fix that issue than on the housing side of it.
Yeah. And to go back to China, the funny thing about that, and I was talking about this with Kevin Muir, like everyone looks at China and is like, "Ooh, I can't invest in there." Like their real estate market's like really bad. But I feel like they kind of did what we need to do, because real estate prices have just been very small, steady, slow drift lower, which as incomes go up, and even if you just keep home prices flat, every year it's that buying power of the population goes up a little bit, right?
And rate of change, right?
Like some of the stuff, like it's all about incentives. Like the government puts some incentives in place for a way to get this massive, boomer supply of homes transferred to younger people at affordable prices, things like this. Like it's all about incentives. We talked about it, off air, about all the things you can do incentive wise to make a really nice, robust market for childcare. Like there's ways to do all this stuff. And the problem is like, no one seems to really care. Like, and it tends to become like everything in America politicized. Like, oh, well, subsidizing childcare in any way, whether that's taxes or outright subsidies or any of it. Like, well, no, you can't do that, right? That's only left would ever do that. And it's like, or vice versa with other things where it's like, the right would want to do some stuff and the left's like, oh, well, you can't do that. Like you can, like you guys can get together and you can do some tax breaks on it on this side, and over here on this side, you can put in some subsidies, thoughtful stuff that make sure you don't, get crazy runaway problems. But
well, and look, I'm going to make this a little bit oversimplified, but just for the edification of everybody listening, I think this is a helpful way to look at it. Think of how crazy it is that we're all sitting around right now lamenting the inaffordability of housing. when in 0809 you have the biggest housing bear market of all time. And what was your response? Your response was to inject monetary policy to a level that we've never done it before, to start buying up U.S. government issued debt in an effort to push interest rates
And
lower.
mortgages.
Who owned all that debt? Rich people, right? So as the yields go down in the midst of one of the greatest bear markets in history, their bonds, their bond pile is growing. So their bonds are reaching record valuations at the same time that real estate hits bottom in the biggest real estate pullback of all time. So now the guys that are most cashed up are the guys with the biggest balance sheets are ready to buy anyway. And at the same time, because the price of housing's dropped so low, rentals you had cap rates back then of 7, 8, 9%. Look over at 30-year treasuries, they're at 1.8. And you're surprised that housing 15 years later is at record in affordability. I mean, if you were going to
And now all that stuff's on its head.
Yeah, and if you were going to design a way to get this to happen, you couldn't do better than that.
Right.
You couldn't do better than that. And so you look at the incentives, like I said, their bond pile just goes through the roof. They got record prices on their bonds, looking over record low prices, brilliant idea. And then the other thing, it was even better than that because the stated values of real estate, if you had money out there at that point, you named your price, right? I mean, you were buying distressed stuff off developers for 70% discounts.
Yeah, and the banks just wanted it off the balance sheet. So,
and meanwhile, the rich guys were all cashed up because their bond pile just went through the freaking moon, you know? And you just look at it and go, at the time you're all cheering it on. And this is where like, I just get so incensed. What are the long-term impacts, guys? Right? What are the long-term impacts? When you go back and look at 0809, policy should have been aimed completely in the opposite direction. Screw the rich people. They're already rich. We don't need to help them. We just backstop the banks. Should have done that in a more responsible way. But you could have directed policy so much better at, you could have, for instance, you could have reworked government controls lending standards already post 0809. Like the fact that whole 7 year, if you defaulted on a home loan, you're out of the game for 7 years. They could have curtailed that. They could have changed that lending standard. That was another really pernicious way to do it because you get the construction worker who was being financially responsible, but all of a sudden lost his job, right? Loses his house. Now he's out of the game for 7 years. By the time he qualifies for a loan, his same freaking house is 40% more than he defaulted on.
Yep.
I'm losing hair, man. And I think one of the reasons is, these types of things, it drives you crazy.
Yeah.
Well, what else do we have?
We had a little bit of day to day. We had the manufacturing ISM, which honestly kind of sadly dovetails into a lot of what we're talking about. You had it's expected to be 49, came in at 48.2, which is, still in contraction, which has been in for like 3 years. But within that, the employment metric was worse this month than last. The new orders worse this month from last, but the prices paid, the inflation part of it up. So you're just getting more like price up, everything else kind of down. So
did you say that on the air? Or were we talking about that off air when you made that point about retail sales? Was that on the air?
Yeah.
We were on the air when we said that?
Yep, 7% up, but in volumes 1% down.
1%
Luke
down.
Groman had posted a little snippet about it. I'm like, that's perfect.
I didn't see that. That cracks me up because I was sitting there looking at things this weekend and I went, you know what, man? I feel like all of this increase is just inflation.
Yeah, I mean, you think about almost everything you're going to buy on Amazon or at Walmart, it's got to be terrifying. Like, it just is what it is. Like, it's going to cost more. There's no way around that. So, this is what it is. And if you charge a bunch more, people can afford less. So they're going to buy less.
I bought my wife in 2020 a brand new Yukon Denali XL. Okay. I think we got it for like 88 grand. Brand new. It's getting up there, 100,000 miles on it, whatever, some issues. So not planning on going, but was just looking, okay, what's out there? You're 25 grand more.
How old you said?
2020. She has a 2020.
So 5 years old, roughly.
5 years. Price of that car is 25 grand more.
5 G's a year.
5 G's a year. Just mind blowing. And that even surprised me, and it goes back to the whole deal. To believe the CPI numbers, and again, I don't think it's like a nefarious cabal or anything like that. I mean, there's some elements of that probably.
It undercounts inflation slowly over time. No, there's no two ways.
And purposefully.
The reason I always know this, and I think a lot of people will fully get where I'm coming from here. If you hear some of these things like, oh, in today's dollars, this thing that happened in 1800s would be worth this, and you're like, no, that's wrong. Because then, they'll be like, Vanderbilt would have been worth like $9 million today. And you're like, no, it's more. That's how I know CPI is BS.
When Jefferson died, I was watching a story about the Levies. They were the family that purchased Monticello from the guy that bought it from Jefferson or from his estate. Yeah. And thank God they did, because they saved it. Then it got run down again. They stepped back in and saved it again. And they're responsible for it still being there, which I think it's a priceless piece of American history.
I'm a giant Monticello and Jefferson nerd, so I fully agree.
So am I. Fascinating individual. But anyway, they were saying that when Jefferson died, he was $107,000 in debt. And the next comment was, and that would be millions of dollars in today's money. And I'm sitting there going, try tens of millions of dollars, right? I mean, to put it in context, and Monticello was an amazing piece of property.
Yeah.
Big piece of land, all that. The Levy family bought it for $3,500, and he's $107,000 in debt when it sold. And this is a good 20 years after he died. So you look at their inflation numbers, you're like, it's nonsense.
Yeah.
If you had $100,000 in the bank back then, you were a baller.
I mean, out of control.
Well, yeah. Well, think about it. Median home price, was it 6, 7? Well, you got Monticello for 35. So let's say median home price was $5,000. Okay. If you have 20x the median home price in your bank account, you are balling.
Yeah.
Balling. So yeah, these inflation numbers are just nonsense. They're complete nonsense.
An important point I think about an inflation number is, and Mike captured this, is the basket of things that people actually have to pay has changed so much. Like when I was a kid, no one was paying a huge chunk of money for childcare.
No.
But now almost everybody is. So like where that hits wallets is so much more important. Like the CPI doesn't care about childcare, right? Now PCE might to a degree, but that's reasons like that stuff's not capturing this, and like, sure, like, you can get a big screen for nothing now, and that's awesome, but who cares whenever it costs you a third of your income for someone to watch your kids, like while you work, like, and your health insurance and if you want your kids to go to a decent school and all that stuff, like and that's another thing it doesn't capture that really stood out to me was quality. Like a lot of the numbers he gave, those work for low quality. And I think this probably resonates with everybody, but the difference between low quality and high quality education, childcare, name a service,
probably
honestly,
bigger than it's ever been.
So big.
Yeah.
Like, and same with food. Like, can you eat for $500 a month? Yeah. But it's going to be,
there's a cost to it.
Yeah. Like frozen pizzas that are going to give you cancer or whatever.
Right.
They're $2, but
it'll save you $500 a month. It's going to cost you 20 years off your life, but
yeah.
It's a good swap, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, and that is a hyperbolic example, but unfortunately that in reality is exactly what inflation ends up making people do. Right?
Exactly.
They get in these perverse pick'ems, right? Where they've got no good choices.
Like we all know shrinkflation, like you get less of the thing, but to me, it's really pernicious because there's a shrinkflation in the quality of not just goods, but services. Like Dimitri's newsletter this past week talking about like you can't talk to a human anymore. And when you can, it's usually terrible experience. Like all customer service is just basically horrible.
Yeah, it's gotten bad.
So then like the like shrinkflation of quality of goods and services is so bad. And I think part of it's just inflation. Like the person that's selling you that good or service, if they want to keep making a decent margin, right? Well, you get less quality.
There's another part into it, and I'll go back to Dimitri on this one because I think it dovetails right into his financial nihilism term he coined. And this is a tougher one because it's more ethereal, and I'll admit that. But there was some part of the social contract that broke in COVID. So, and I haven't really fleshed this out. And truthfully, I think it'll probably take years, maybe even decades to be able to really flesh it out. But so many of these things were, in 2018, customer service, generally speaking, in the economy was not at 1955 standards. Okay. But it wasn't
it did break in COVID, and it has been an incredibly slow recovery since.
And one of my fears is that a big part of that break isn't retrievable because of that financial nihilism part.
Except for rich people.
Except for rich people.
And Dimitri talked about this.
And if you hear it on social media, I don't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
It's only the rich people that are defending the current setup.
Right. And this, someone referred to this as a velvet rope economy and thing, and it's a good way of putting it. But
yeah.
But Dimitri talked about this. The at JFK, they have a very special place for first class people that are flying overseas, right? And this thing, it's like being in a 5-star hotel. Everything about it is incredible. So it is because I think it was on the show. One of the guys said, I'm just waiting for there eventually to be first class doesn't even have to go near the unwashed masses. And he's like, hold on, that does already exist in a way. Yes, you have to go in the same entrance of the airport, but then it reaches this point where you're come with us, and you're away from everybody else.
Oh, we had my for our 20th anniversary, we went to Bora Bora, right? And it was awesome. But they had a new special lounge for first class people, and it wasn't if you had upgrade didn't qualify. It was this new higher.
We keep slapping on new higher tiers on everything to make people feel special.
Yep. And it was awesome. But I hadn't really thought about it in that context, but you put it out. It was, the whole thing was you're separated from them. Right.
Right.
And best plane trip selfishly I ever took.
Yeah.
But,
high end qualities there. But if you're not, people that aren't high income, that are in that working middle class, that are above government assistance, but below crushing it, their quality in the economy cabin is you don't even get peanuts half the time, right?
Yeah.
And you're the row of seats in front of you is 3 inches away, and just brutal. So it's weird to see the quality of just experiencing capitalism, I don't know, is shrinking for those people as it expands for the higher end.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even just incomes and outcomes. It's even service quality is getting brutalized for those people.
Kind of reminds you of Jerry Maguire. Remember when she said it used to be first class is a better seat, now it's a better life? And there's and there are people out there be like, oh, it's always been that way. Look, yes, I agree. It's always been in play. Okay. But not like this. Not like this. Where you're sitting there going, a starter home, you got a young couple doing well. You go through it really quick. You go, oh, there's no way. Yeah, there's no way you can swing that. That's just never been the case. I remember when my wife and I bought our first home. We didn't have any business buying a home at that time, but we got a 3-bedroom home with a fence, beautiful backyard, little covered porch on the front of it. Nice little place, 1,800 square feet for $240,000. You know what I mean? And that same house now you're looking at $550,000, and that's we bought it 20 years ago. So
inflation hasn't done that. Yeah.
No. Well, and on top of it, I wasn't paying 7% for my mortgage either. I think I was at 5.2 or something like that. But yeah, it's just not, and we're not bagging on America. We're not saying that. I don't think you're doing anybody any services if you're just acting like these issues don't exist.
Right. And the key, that's the key to me is if you see these consumer sentiment surveys and similar things, not to mention political outcomes, and you're not curious, why is this happening? And then finding answers and things like what Mike said, that's a massive national disservice, because if the struggles of this massive middle aren't addressed, they will address it themselves, and that isn't going to be any fun for anybody. That's history of humanity. That's of organized societies. If you leave the middle to just kind of twist in the wind, they will come for you.
I think there's a lot of evidence that's happening right now. You know what I mean? Look at the election outcomes, right? You'll have elections 12 months, 24 months apart from each other, and a different extremist on the, just There
You
is
see it
no
in
middle ground.
Europe as well.
Yeah, there is no middle ground.
Right.
Right. And think about that. The
People are just taking a desperate lunge to populist left, then back to populist right, then back to populist left.
right.
And if they don't get any results, eventually the people are going to be like, all right, well, we got to try something completely different. And if populism doesn't work, I don't want to know what they think will work.
Yeah. And then what I just saw state of New York just sent out $300 checks to everybody to offset the effects of inflation.
That never gets old.
You know what? So
But I will say New York is I just saw a thing where they're setting aside a bunch of money to do some childcare stuff. Now, do I expect them to allocate it wisely? Probably not. But point being though, like at least they are tapping into one of the biggest problems and potentially addressing it.
yeah, and they're just going to do it in a way that drives the price of it even higher.
That's the key. Is you have to have the supply. You have to have the incentives to increase supply that go along with anything that incentivizes prices.
The opinions expressed in this program are for general informational purposes only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual or on any specific security. Any references to performance of securities are thought to be materially accurate, and actual performance may differ.
Now, one other thing too, and I'll just throw this on top of the giant heap of what's wrong. But another thing, the leadership side of it, right? The people that we've put in power. And there are other examples, but just the recent one I saw this weekend. RFK Jr., regardless of what you think about him, just focus on the economic side of this argument, right? Elizabeth Warren was speaking to what RFK wanted to do and some of his things he wanted to do with the pharmaceutical companies, the drug companies. And she was all freaked out. If this happens, nobody will make vaccines. We won't have vaccines anymore. And I'm hearing her sit there going, woman, how is it possible you are your age and have no understanding of how free markets work? If there is a market for vaccines, they'll be there, right? Somebody will make them. The government will see fit, right? That is the dumbest argument. And I'm like, on a base level, and there's way worse than her. I'm not trying to single her out, but how do you get out of this mire when you have somebody say something that is so, you hear somebody say something like that, you're like, just make sure she doesn't get to vote, right? And again, it's not a partisan argument. It's talking about free markets, right? How often do you see things that are extraordinarily useful and needed for humanity that quit existing? Never, right? What? Because somebody can make money selling it, for God's sake. And a lot of these vaccines, especially older ones, there's there's already a formula, right? So you don't need $2 billion of investment to issue the smallpox vaccine. You know what I mean? It's just, and you're going, if that's the way these people think, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I don't know how the heck we get out of this.
Yeah. I mean, leadership quality,
Oh,
whether it's federal government, state government, local government, corporate America, education, you name it, like leadership quality has been diluted significally. I don't think there's any two ways about that.
I mean, her making that comment is equivalent of, I'm worried about the stock market going to zero. You're just like, guys, that isn't how things end.
That's gonna be the podcast title right there. You're worried about the market going to zero.
Oh yeah, there you go.
With
there you
a
go.
Flaming background.
Yeah, well, I'm just like, and I've always laughed about that one because I've always been like, so deflation's going to be the end of us, huh? How many countries do you know went under because their currency became too valuable? I don't know of one. I don't know of one. It's not usually how it works. Well, because if deflation is the problem, we could fix that real quick. We've proven that.
Yeah.
We don't even need that. We don't even need to have.
That's one thing we are still good at is fixing deflation.
Oh, we're the best. We're like come on, man.
Turns out it's the same way you fix inflation. Send people checks.
Yeah, weird deal. Yeah, that it works. There's the panacea, right? Yeah. Money to the folks. You got anything else for us?
No, good to go.
All righty, you guys. Well, we will be back in tomorrow, and we finally, Tony and I worked it out. We are locked on for 10 a.m. this Friday.
By the way, he's got a conference coming up, a real life in-person conference in Tennessee.
I know, and he and I were discussing that.
Yeah.
He would like you and I to attend. I mean, I think he's kind of blowing the party, meaning if he really wanted to, he'd have us speak naturally. No, I'm just kidding.
I need my velvet rope first class flight to Tennessee, and maybe I'll be able to make an appearance.
Yeah, hey Tone, you got to VIP us in some way or shape or form, right? No, but I've always wanted to go down to Nashville. He's doing it in Nashville, and I've got a buddy down there, actually Chad Benson, that does a show down there, a nationally syndicated radio show, and he's been griping at me to get down there constantly because he wants to go play golf down there. So I thought we might check calendars and see if we can't make that happen. Quick turnaround too. It's only a 2-dayer.
Yeah, I know Cuppy's going to be there. So
and Brent.
Yeah, and Brent. Yeah.
It'd be good to go see some of those cats.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right, you guys. Well, hey, great holiday weekend, or at least I had a great holiday weekend. I hope you did as well.
Oh, definitely.
And as always, you can get the video feed. Video will be back up as of today. All right, we got the fearless millennial Darren back in the saddle. You can always find ourselves. Just search Know Your Risk Podcast on YouTube. Google Know Your Risk Podcast. Find us on all the different podcast sites. Go to bulwarkcapitalmanagement.com, knowyourriskpodcast.com. You guys know the deal. We'll see you tomorrow. You're listening to Know Your Risk Podcast. Download and subscribe at knowyourriskpodcast.com.
Investment advice cannot be given without a client service agreement. Zach Abraham is an investment advisor representative of Trek Financial, an SEC registered investment advisor. Bulwark Capital Management is a marketing name only and does not carry a separate registration.